The rain came down in sheets that afternoon, turning the Texas dirt roads into rivers of mud. Sarah Mitchell gripped the steering wheel of her ancient pickup truck, squinting through the windshield as her wipers fought a losing battle against the deluge. She'd been driving for nearly an hour, trying to make it back to her small farmhouse before the storm got worse, but the sky had other plans. It had been 14 months since Tom passed. 14 months of learning to run the farm alone, of figuring out which bills could wait and which couldn't, of lying awake at night wondering how long she could keep the land that had been in his family for 3 generations. The medical bills had taken nearly everything, and the drought last summer had taken the rest. Now, at 42 years old, Sarah found herself working 2 jobs and still falling behind on the mortgage. The wind picked up suddenly, violently, and Sarah's truck shuddered. She glanced in her rearview mirror and felt her blood run cold. The sky behind her had turned a sickly green, and beneath it, a dark funnel was beginning to form, snaking down toward the earth like a finger of God pointing at something he wanted destroyed. Sarah pressed harder on the accelerator, but the old Ford could only do so much. Her heart hammered in her chest as she frantically searched for shelter. There was nothing out here, just miles of empty prairie and barbed wire fences. Then, up ahead, she saw it, a figure standing beside a broken-down truck on the side of the road, waving his arms. Every instinct told her to keep driving, to save herself, but Sarah had been raised better than that. Tom always said you help people when they need it, no questions asked. She slammed on the brakes and leaned across to throw open the passenger door. "Get in!" she screamed over the roar of the wind. The man didn't hesitate. He was tall, wearing a battered cowboy hat and denim jacket, and he practically dove into the truck. He'd barely gotten the door closed before Sarah was accelerating again. "There's a tornado," he started to say. "I know," Sarah cut him off, her eyes scanning the landscape desperately. "We need to find shelter. Now." "There's an old farmhouse about a mile up this road," the stranger said, pointing ahead. "Turn left at the oak tree. Place has been abandoned for years, but it's got a storm cellar." Sarah followed his directions, turning onto a barely visible dirt track that her truck nearly got stuck in twice. The wind was screaming now, and through the rain, she could see the tornado growing larger, closer, angrier. When the sagging farmhouse came into view, she didn't bother parking properly, just threw the truck into park and both of them ran. The stranger reached the cellar doors first, wrenching them open with a strength born of pure adrenaline. They tumbled down the stone steps into darkness just as the world above them exploded into chaos. Sarah pulled the doors shut, and they huddled together in the blackness, listening to the freight train roar of the tornado passing overhead. It lasted maybe 3 minutes, but it felt like hours. When the sound finally began to fade, Sarah realized she was shaking, and the stranger's arm was around her shoulders. She couldn't see his face in the dark, but she could hear his steady breathing, feel the calm presence of him beside her. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You saved my life back there." Most people wouldn't have stopped. "Most people aren't from around here," Sarah replied, her voice shakier than she wanted it to be. "We help each other. That's just how it is." They waited another 10 minutes before climbing back up into the daylight. The farmhouse was mostly intact, miraculously, though Sarah's truck had been picked up and deposited on its side about 50 yards away. The stranger's vehicle was completely gone, probably scattered across 3 counties by now. "Well," Sarah said, looking at the wreckage, "I guess we're walking." The stranger pushed his hat back and looked at her properly for the first time. He had weathered features, probably in his mid-50s, with kind eyes and the deep tan of someone who spent his life outdoors. "I'm James," he said, extending his hand. "James Colton." "Sarah Mitchell," she replied, shaking it. Something about the name seemed familiar, but she couldn't place it. They started walking toward the main road, a good 5 miles away. James insisted on carrying the emergency bag Sarah had grabbed from her truck. As they walked, they talked. Sarah found herself telling him about Tom, about the farm, about the crushing weight of trying to keep everything together. She didn't know why she was opening up to this stranger, but something about surviving a tornado together made normal social boundaries seem silly. James listened more than he talked, but what he did say revealed he knew farming, knew the land, knew the struggles she was facing. He offered advice that was actually useful, not the patronizing nonsense she usually got from the old-timers in town who thought a woman couldn't run a farm properly. By the time they reached the highway and flagged down a passing motorist, Sarah felt like she'd known James for years instead of hours. He made sure she got a ride home safely, refusing her offer to drive him where he needed to go because she'd already done enough. As she drove away, watching him in the side mirror, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Not quite hope, but maybe the possibility of it. 2 weeks later, Sarah was in the bank, hat literally in hand, trying to negotiate an extension on her mortgage payment. The manager, Mr. Peterson, was giving her the same sympathetic but ultimately unhelpful speech she'd heard before when his phone rang. "Yes, Mr. Colton," Peterson said, and Sarah's ears perked up at the name. "Yes, sir. Of course. Right away." He hung up and looked at Sarah with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Mrs. Mitchell, I need to step out for a moment. Please wait here." When he returned 10 minutes later, he wasn't alone. Behind him walked James, dressed now in pressed jeans and a crisp white shirt, looking like a different person but somehow exactly the same. Sarah stood up, confused. "James? What are you doing here?" "Hello, Sarah," he said with a gentle smile. "I've been trying to figure out how to tell you this without making things awkward, but I guess there's no good way. That day on the road, you saved the life of one of the largest landowners in 3 counties. My family's owned this land since before the Civil War. I own the bank's holding company, most of the commercial property in town, and about 40,000 acres of ranch land." Sarah felt her knees go weak. She sank back into her chair. "I've been looking into your situation," James continued quickly, seeing her distressed expression. "Not to pry, but because I wanted to understand what someone like you, someone with that much courage and kindness, was dealing with. Your medical bills from your husband's illness, the drought damage, the equipment loans. Sarah, no one should lose their family's land because they stopped to help a stranger." "I don't want charity," Sarah said firmly, finding her voice. "And I'm not offering it," James replied. He sat down across from her. "I'm offering a job. I need a farm manager for the eastern section of my ranch, about 2,000 acres that I've been letting go fallow because I can't find anyone I trust to run it properly. Someone who knows the land, who understands what it takes to make things grow in this difficult climate. Someone who won't quit when things get hard." He slid a folder across the desk. "Salary, benefits, housing if you need it, though I figure you'd rather stay on your own land. The job comes with a signing bonus that would be enough to clear your current debts and get your farm back on solid ground. After that, what you do with your own place is up to you. Keep farming it, lease it out, whatever makes sense. But I need someone like you, Sarah. Someone who stops for strangers in a tornado." Sarah opened the folder with trembling hands. The numbers she saw made her dizzy. It wasn't an insult disguised as help. It was a genuine, generous offer for real work. "Why?" she whispered. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," James said. "I know you're the kind of person who risks her life for a stranger. I know you've been carrying an impossible weight for over a year and haven't given up. I know you love this land the way I do. That's enough." Sarah looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll think about it," James replied. "Take the folder home. Talk to your family, your friends, whoever you need to talk to. But Sarah, I want you to know something. That day, you didn't just save my life. You reminded me why I stay here, why I fight to keep this land going when it would be easier to sell it all to developers and retire somewhere easy. You reminded me that there are still good people in this world." 3 months later, Sarah was standing in the middle of a field that was green with winter wheat, something that hadn't grown successfully in this area for 2 years. She'd taken the job, cleared her debts, and discovered that she had a real gift for large-scale farm management. More than that, she'd found a purpose again, a reason to get up in the morning beyond just survival. James had become a friend, a real one, someone she had coffee with on Sunday mornings while they discussed crop rotations and water management. He'd introduced her to other ranchers and farmers, helping her build a network of contacts that made her better at her job. He never mentioned that day in the tornado unless she brought it up, never held it over her head, never made her feel like she owed him anything. But she knew the truth. She'd helped a stranger, And that stranger had turned out to own half the county. More importantly, he'd turned out to be exactly the kind of person she'd hoped he was in that dark cellar. Someone decent, someone good, someone who understood that the best way to honor a second chance at life was to give someone else a chance too. Standing in that green field, feeling the sun on her face and the wind in her hair, Sarah Mitchell thought about Tom and hoped he'd be proud. She'd done what he always told her to do. She'd helped someone who needed it, no questions asked. And in return, she'd been helped in exactly the way she needed, at exactly the right time. Sometimes, she thought, the universe works in mysterious ways. And sometimes, a tornado brings more than destruction. Sometimes, if you're very lucky, it brings hope.